Hey guys, today we are talking about the absolute explosion at GH involving Curtis, Portia, and Isaiah. A massive paternity bomb just dropped and Curtis literally collapsed. Let's get into the madness. So let's just start from the very beginning of this absolute disaster, because I'm still trying to wrap my head around the sheer audacity of Curtis Ashford. And you guys know I have been covering this show for a long time. I have seen characters do some really stupid, reckless things. But what Curtis did today, it has to go down in the Port Charles history books as one of the most arrogant, self-destructive moves we have ever witnessed. I am honestly exhausted just thinking about it. But we need to break this down piece by piece. Dante Falconry, who was already dealing with a massive mountain of stress because of his son Rocco. Shooting a WSB agent actually did Curtis a solid. Dante stuck his neck out. He removed the handcuffs. He processed the bail. He let Curtis walk out of the Port Charles Police Department. You would think that a normal human being, after getting arrested for publicly assaulting a doctor in the middle of the Metro Court Gardens, you would go home. You would think you would go cool off. Maybe call a lawyer. Maybe sit in a dark room and think about how he just shattered a man's hand. But no, not Curtis Ashford. Curtis walked out of that precinct and decided that he wasn't done. He was still fuming. He was still completely blinded by this toxic territorial rage over Portia's pregnancy. He genuinely convinced himself that Isaiah Gannon, a world-class surgeon, was somehow faking his injuries. Just let that sink in for a second. Isaiah has 11 fractures in his hand. 11 he has severed tendons. His career as a surgeon is essentially over, or at the very least put on a massive indefinite hold. And Curtis, in his infinite wisdom, decided that Isaiah was just milking it to ruin his reputation. I mean, let's be real here. Curtis ruined his own reputation the second he threw that punch, but Curtis always has to be the victim. He always has to be the righteous one. So instead of going home, he marches straight over to General Hospital. He is a man on a mission. Incredibly stupid mission, but a mission nonetheless. He walks through those sliding doors into the crowded hospital lobby, and you can just feel the tension radiating off of him. The nurses are whispering. The orderlies are staring. Everyone in town knows what happened at the Metro Court by now because gossip travels faster than light in Port Charles. And there is Isaiah. Poor Isaiah is standing there in the middle of the lobby, literally clutching his shattered hand, probably waiting on a console or some pain meds, looking completely defeated. And here comes Curtis stomping over like a bull seeing red. He doesn't pull Isaiah aside. He doesn't try to have a quiet, menacing conversation in a corner. No, he starts yelling right there in the middle of the crowded lobby. Curtis starts laying into him, accusing him of faking the severity of the injury. "You're playing up this hand thing to make me look bad. You're trying to destroy my name." He is shouting this at a man whose hand is visibly destroyed. It's unhinged. It is completely unhinged. Sometimes I wonder what the writers are thinking, making Curtis this stubbornly blind. But then I remember how he acted when he found out about Trina. The Ashford pride is a dangerous, blinding thing. He thinks he owns Portia. He thinks he owns this unborn baby. He feels this intense possessive need to mark his territory, and it is just gross to watch. But here is where things go from bad to absolutely nuclear. Portia is there. Of course she is there. She works there, and she is heavily pregnant, and she is already carrying the weight of 1,000 secrets. Portia sees her husband, who has just bilaid out of jail, verbally abusing the man he just physically assaulted, and Portia just breaks. You guys, then we have to talk about Portia for a minute because it is fascinating and frustrating all at once. Portia has a history of keeping massive, life-altering paternity secrets. We all remember the year she spent lying about Trina. She let Marcus Taggart believe he was the father. She let Curtis remain in the dark, and it blew up their lives when the truth finally came out. You would think she learned her lesson. You would think she would say, "Hey, maybe I shouldn't lie about who fathered my child ever again." But nope, she did it again. But in this moment, in the middle of the GH lobby, Portia cannot take it anymore. She cannot watch Curtis act like this violently possessive maniac over a child that isn't even his. She sees Isaiah, the actual father of her baby, standing there with a ruined career because of Curtis's misplaced jealousy. The guilt, the exhaustion, the hormones, the sheer panic of the situation, it all boils over. Curtis yells something about Isaiah needing to stay away from his child, and that is the trigger. That is the exact moment Portia snaps. She steps between them, tears streaming down her face, and she just screams. She doesn't whisper it. She doesn't pull Curtis into an empty exam room. In the middle of the crowded hospital lobby with doctors, nurses, and patients watching, Portia screams at the top of her lungs, "He is not just your victim. He is the biological father of the baby I am carrying." Honestly, I got chills. Just watching it, the delivery was incredible. The echo of her voice in that lobby, the immediate suffocating silence that followed. You could hear a pin drop in General Hospital. Let's just pause and appreciate the absolute messiness of this soap opera moment. It is peak daytime drama. Portia, who has been holding onto this lie, just detonated a nuclear bomb in the most public way possible. And she did it because Curtis pushed her into a corner. If Curtis had just gone home, if he had just left Isaiah alone, she probably would have kept lying for another 6 months. But his toxic need to dominate the situation forced the truth out of her. Now, let's talk about Curtis's reaction, because this is where things get genuinely scary. Curtis is a proud man. The Ashford bloodline means everything to him. He spent months in a wheelchair feeling helpless. And when he finally got his legs back, he overcompensated by trying to be the ultimate alpha male. He thought he was defending his family. He thought he was protecting his unborn child from a creep. When Portia screamed those words, you could literally see the ground collapse beneath his feet. The camera zoomed in on his face, and the look of pure, unadulterated devastation was hard to watch. Maybe I'm being too harsh on him sometimes, because finding out your wife lied about paternity again is a horrific betrayal. It really is. Portia is dead wrong for lying. But Curtis's actions leading up to it were so vile that it's hard to feel complete sympathy for him. He realizes in that split second that everything he just did, the assault, the arrest, the ruined reputation, the destruction of a man's surgical career, was all for nothing. He was fighting for a child that isn't his. He was defending a marriage that is built on a mountain of lies. He just turned himself into a criminal and a monster over a lie. The physical toll of that realization hits him like a freight train. Curtis starts to stumble. He clutches his chest. His breathing gets erratic. The stress, the anger, the ultimate betrayal, it causes a massive physiological reaction. His blood pressure spikes dangerously high. And then right there in the middle of the lobby, right in front of the medical team, right in front of the wife who just betrayed him and the hand he just shattered, Curtis collapses. He just drops. It was terrifying. It looked like a massive heart attack or a stroke. The Ashford pride literally broke his heart. The chaos that erupted after he hit the floor was insane. Doctors and nurses rushed over. Portia is screaming, dropping to her knees, suddenly switching from furious truth-teller back to terrified doctor-wife. But she can't even touch him without feeling the guilt of knowing her lie put him on floor. Isaiah is standing there in agony from his hand, in shock from learning he is going to be a father, watching the man who assaulted him fight for his life. It is a Shakespearean tragedy wrapped in a soap opera. What does this mean for the future? Honestly, I think this is the absolute end of Curtis and Portia. There's no coming back from this. None. Zero. You can survive a lot of things on a soap opera. You can survive kidnapping, amnesia, evil twins, but you cannot survive a wife lying about paternity twice, combined with a husband who turns into a violent possessive of abuser when he feels threatened. The trust is gone. The respect is gone. The marriage is dead on arrival. And what about Isaiah? This poor guy came to Port Charles to do a surgery to save a life, and now his hand is destroyed. His career is in jeopardy, and he just found out he's going to be a father to Portia's baby. He is tied to this toxic Ashford drama forever now. Will he sue Curtis? He absolutely should. Curtis deserves to lose everything for what he did. But will Isaiah stick around? How is he going to co-parent with Portia while dealing with the trauma of losing his surgical abilities? And think about Aunt Stella. Think about Marshall. Think about Trina. Oh my God, Trina's going to lose her mind. She finally accepted Curtis as her dad. She finally got her family to a somewhat stable place. And now her mother has done the exact same thing again. Trina is going to be disgusted with Portia, and she is going to be heartbroken for Curtis. Even though Curtis acted like a complete psycho, I have to wonder if the writers are setting Curtis up for another major health crisis. He just got out of the wheelchair, and now he might be facing a stroke or severe heart condition. It feels a bit repetitive, but it also feels like karma. You can't run around town punching people in hospitals without your blood pressure catching up to you eventually. The fans on social media are already going crazy. Half the timeline is screaming that Portia is the worst character on the show for lying again. The other half is saying Curtis got exactly what he deserved for being an arrogant bully. Honestly, I think they are both right. They are both incredibly flawed, toxic people who bring out the absolute worst in each other. I am so tired of Portia's secrets. I really am. Every time she gets backed into a corner, she lies. And when the lie gets too heavy, she explodes and hurts everyone around her. But I am also tired of Curtis acting like he is the moral compass of Port Charles while simultaneously acting like a thug. He used to be a cool, collected private investigator. Now, he's just an angry, bitter club owner who throws temper tantrums. So, what happens next? Curtis is going to be rushed into the ER. Portia is going to have to explain to the police, to Dante, to everyone why this whole thing happened. Dante is going to be furious that he bylaid Curtis out just for Curtis to go cause a medical emergency at the hospital. Joe Fitzpatrick is probably going to show up and use this as an excuse to crack down even harder on Dante's leniency. It's a ripple effect that is going to touch half the canvas. I'll be honest, I didn't see the collapse coming. I knew the paternity reveal was coming. We all knew Isaiah was the daddy. The clues were there. The longing looks, the weird tension. But having Curtis physically break down in the middle of the lobby, that was a stroke of genius by the